Hey y'all, Just Plain Joe here. I'm sitting here at Hagood Mill, Historic Grist Mill. It's been here since the 1830s in Pickens, South Carolina. I'm here today to answer a few question and answers from a question that I posted on Facebook yesterday. Just asking what my fans, some of them may have been wondering about me. So here are some of the questions and I'll answer them as best as I can. This first question is from Deborah Schmid, who asks, who has been the most influential person into shaping some of who I am as a person? I don't know if I could narrow that down to one person. Probably everybody that I've ever met, every family, close friend, they've all had some degree of influence. When it comes to my wood carving, probably my Uncle Bill would have been my biggest influence. I grew up around him. He had a little wood carving shop, and I spent a lot of my childhood and early years there, hanging out in his shop, and playing in the wood shavings on the floor and watching him carve and whittle. So yeah, my Uncle Bill's probably the biggest influence as far as my wood carving. The writing just kind of came on its own. I was, I guess, born to be a writer. And when it comes to music, my singing, probably the biggest influence would have to be the members of Aesop's Fools, some of whom are no longer with us, like Eric Sanders, also known as Spag, and my former wife, Crystal Kirkendall, who's also no longer with us. They were very talented though, and it's a great loss to the world that they passed as soon as they did. Our next question comes from Annette Hershey, who asks, where do my poems come from? She actually asked several questions. I'll have to address these one at a time. Poems, they come from a lot of different places. Feelings I had, dreams I had, the depression that I suffer from influences my emotions, and when I get pretty depressed, while being depressed on the downside kind of sucks, it does provide a lot of inspiration for my writing. So that's where a lot of that comes from. She asks if I can write on a topic intentionally and the flow work out well. Yeah, especially if it's a topic that I'm into, I guess would be the word. She asks, do I wake up from sleeping with a whole poem in my head? No, I don't think that's ever happened. I have had ideas that I would wake up with that I would later work on and develop into a poem, but I don't think I've ever woke up with one completely formed and already written in my head. She asked, at what age did I start to write? My first short story was published in a little booklet put out by my high school when I was a junior. It was a short story called Hands Across Time that was published in this little booklet called The Palmatonian. Our next question comes from Maureen Mell, who wants me to tell you guys a little bit about the mountains, streams, and the woods around where I hang out. And we're in one of those spots today. We've also visited several others. We've been to Twin Falls today, to Table Rock State Park. We tried to hit Caesar's Head, but it's a very nice warm Saturday, and the places are pretty crowded. So it's kind of hard for us to hit some of the spots I wanted to hit today. But I live in the foothills of the South Carolina mountains, and there are many, many waterfalls and mountains and just beautiful scenic spots around my home within a short driving distance. And this up in the mountains, up in these areas is where I prefer to be. Sherry Allen asks, what was the first item that I carved and who inspired me? Well, we've already kind of spoken about my Uncle Bill being my major inspiration, and I believe the first thing I ever carved was a wooden staff for a friend of mine in North Carolina named Steve Hatley, who I believe probably he still owns that staff. And as best I remember, it had like some monster faces and eyeballs and was kind of spooky, kind of creepy looking, but yeah, I like stuff like that, so yay. Our next question comes from Roxanne Kamen. She asks, if I came with a warning label, what would it say? I really don't know. I'm not really sure about that. What do you think? Jennifer's operating the camera for me today. Thank you, Jennifer. I don't know. He's a crazy guy, kind of, you know, he's probably going to spook you out, tell you some spooky stories. You may wake up with nightmares after reading some of his stuff. Our next question comes from Kim and Laurel Carr, and they're asking where I was born, here in the upstate, South Carolina. Looks like they're closing up the cabins. I was born here in the upstate South Carolina. Have I ever been married? No, I wasn't married. I did have a wife by common law here in South Carolina. If you live together for more than a year, I think it is, you're basically legally considered to be married, whether you've actually been before a preacher or not. So, yeah. And we have a son who's now in the Air Force. His name is Jeremiah Lane. They're asking, let's see, my favorite food. I'm going to go with pork barbecue, smoked pork. Just had a pretty good barbecue sandwich a little while ago at the Pumpkin Town Opry House, where we stopped for lunch. At what age did I first start carving? I'm going to say in my early 20s. I don't know exactly. I'm going to say I was probably around 23, I'm guessing. Favorite song of all time? I'm going to have to go with one of our own songs from Aesop's Fools, which would be the last song that I ever wrote with my best friend, Spag, also known as Eric Sanders from North Carolina. It's a song called 10 in the Dust. Gene Taylor from Williamston asks, what jobs have I had and how did I get along with my coworkers? I've worked all sorts of jobs. I've done framing carpentry, built houses. I've worked in cabinet making. I've done some house painting, residential. I've worked in various factories doing stuff like making PVC pipe, making duct work for people's heating and air. I've worked in restaurants and fast food and all sorts of jobs over the years. But I have to say I much more enjoy working for myself and doing my own thing, my carving, my art, and my writing. So, adios to those old jobs. Do I make friends easy or is it hard? It depends. It depends on my mood. If I'm in a good mood, it's pretty easy. If I'm depressed, I tend to avoid people. So and that's not because I don't like them, it's just to avoid dragging people down with the fact that I'm down, if that makes any sense. Jean also asked, do I drink coffee or Coke? Yeah, I do drink coffee and sodas. She asked, do I go to church or do I talk to Jesus at home? I do believe in God and Jesus, but I do tend to worship on my own and avoid church. Not that I dislike church, but I have my reasons. She asked, how did I meet Reggie, she is also friends with. She's talking about Reggie Williams Dowell, who's on my friend list. Reggie and I met through a mutual group called the original Over the Hill Hippies. And she liked my poetry and some of the artwork, pictures of my wood carvings that I'd posted on there. And she bought one of my canes, and when I went to deliver it to her, that's how we met and became friends. And lastly, she asks, do I miss singing and do I still have any of my CDs? Yes, I do kind of miss the music scene somewhat. No, I don't have any CDs left laying around. Maybe I can get some copies made at some point, and maybe I'll be recording some new stuff at some point. We'll see how that goes. Kim Moore asks, she's asking where my singing talent and poetry, the writing, comes from. I was just born this way. I've always been very creative. I draw, I do sketches, I've done oil painting, wood carving, singing, poetry. I write short stories. I'm working on a novel. And I've just always been this way. So I really don't have an answer for where it comes from. I think God just gave it to me and decided, here you go, do something with this. So I do the best I can. Linda Patterson Copeland asks, what inspires me to get out of bed each day? Willpower. That's the only answer for that, because with the depression, I mean, you have to, it either takes you down or you overcome it. You just have to fight and try to do what you feel like you need to do, regardless of how you may be feeling. So yeah, the answer for that would be willpower and the Lord. Thank you, Lord. Vicki Eaton asks about my grandfather, who I did a recent post on about his sawmill. He passed away in late September. My younger brother is going to be moving into his house pretty soon. It needs a little work, and I've been helping my brother to do the repair work on it and get the place back in shape, including the sawmill. And she says to describe what I admire about him and his way of life. I think the best thing about my grandfather, his name was Louis, I think the best thing about him was how he could take nothing and make something out of it. If there was something on his farm that he needed, if he didn't have what would do the job, then he would figure it out. Some way to make something that would suit that purpose. And out of whatever raw materials he could get his hands on, he would put something together that would work. Like pumping water from a stream to irrigate his field where he planted his garden. He would take whatever parts he could find and make something that would do the job and pump that water to where he needed it to be. I think that's what I admired the most about him. Some of these people are asking the same questions. The next one from John Mitchell Hillenberg is also asking about my grandfather and his sawmill. We'll do more on the sawmill later. We've got some cleanup to do on it, where it has fallen into a state of disrepair and kind of grown up in the bushes, but we're going to be clearing it out, and I'll do a longer video later about the sawmill. Maybe we can get to see it in action. Joanne Crambeck asks, have I ever lived in or traveled to other states? Yes, I've lived pretty much, well, I've traveled to pretty much most of the southern half of the U.S., from the East Coast to the West and back again. and I visited most of the states on our side of the Mason-Dixon line, I guess. Pretty much the whole southern half. I've lived outside of the state of South Carolina, which is my home state. I've lived in North Carolina as well, and worked up there. And I've got a good many musician friends from up there. Half of the band Aesop's Fools was from up there in Stanley County, a little town called Albemarle. Hey, Albemarle folks. Hey guys. So yeah, shout out to all them. Nug, Rodney Green, Mandy, you guys know who you are. Dustin, love all you guys. So yeah. And Laura Stokes asks, did I watch someone carve or did I just start doing it? Which goes back again to my Uncle Bill. Yeah, I grew up. Him and his aunt, my Aunt Donna Jean, babysat me when my parents would be working, and I spent a lot of time, especially in the summers when school was out up there, and playing in the wood shavings in the floor of his shop, watching him carve. So yeah, he was definitely my inspiration on the wood carving. And I think that just about answers all the questions for today. I hope this has helped you guys get to know me a little better, and I'm going to get a little more footage of the mill, walk around, let you guys get a look at the water wheel and stuff. And I'll see you again soon. Just Plain Joe.